Hello everyone and welcome to episode 37 of Wizard Weekly, where we bring you news and humor from around the spiral. This week a high-flying new Horde Pack came out, the Ravens Horde. This pack provides a plethora of interesting new items. There's a great deal of new gear, 3 new wands including the first ever bow, unique new furniture items as well as some icy old favorites, the new moonflower plant as well as some other seeds, ice pets and snacks of all shapes and sizes, and 2 new high-flying 2-passenger mounts, the Raven and Blood Raven. This ice-centric pack is available in the crown shop for 399 crowns and appears to be in the spiral for good. Getting tired of whomping Wisteria and zipping through Zafaria? Head on over to the test realms, which have opened up to test some new transformations, having appeared in the crown shop there. Wolves, magma men, and battle boar transformations, along with a slew of others, need to be tested thoroughly and are just 75 crowns. No crowns? No problem. You're started with 25,000 on the test realms. There's been a rash of break-ins across the spiral, and all the culprits have been seen heading back to the Oasis retreat of Sarah Battletheif. After she conned this magnificent desert palace out of the hands of a high sultan, she set to work making it a Thieves Paradise. It's guarded by several magical bells that, when rung, put up a protective barrier over the entire island that will turn away any intruders. This isn't your typical rundown thieves' den either. Sarah has worked hard to keep this place in pristine condition while adding a few features of her own. Head through the outer lobby and you'll end up in the pet maze, where pets that have been lost or rescued can spend their day playing around in the dense foliage or relaxing at the shallow pool that's just for them. A bridge over a river of flowers gives them a passage down to the lush oasis, and should the sun become too strong for them. Across the way is her PvP arena, where spectators can gather out of the sun for a match or watch from the VIP box with a wide assortment of snacks. In the back of the house is a small fountain area that Sarah's been trying to cultivate, but the moisture has attracted some humongo frogs to the area and they refuse to leave, eating all her attempts at planting. Off to the side there's a small poultry farm that helps her desert getaway sustain itself without having to turn to the outside for food. To get inside her palace, you must make it through her gauntlet of defensive pets and ring the gong outside the door. Only then are you allowed to enter. Once inside, you can relax in her sprawling lobby or head right for her vast library to read a good scroll or grab a knowledge crystal and relax. It boasts texts from around the spiral, just don't ask her how she came by them. If you're not in a reading mood, then head back across the lobby to her grand theater, where they're getting ready to put on a production of The War of Wintertusk. This luxurious loungeabout has seats enough for the entire city, as well as state-of-the-art special effects. In the next... I could have sworn her pet was here in that cage when I came through earlier. What a wreck! What happened here? It kind of worries me because just up the ramp is the master bedroom, where I'd booked a week's vacation. It's simple, but well guarded by her fierce hound, who makes sure no unauthorized guests try to take off with the decor, or the occupants. Not all treasures are gold, and there's a special vault set aside that's temperature controlled and padded to ensure that absolutely nothing happens to Sarah's more fragile treasures. Overlooking the inner city is a magnificent bird sanctuary. You see, birds are symbolic to the people of this exotic getaway because it can slip through the tightest of situations to fly away to freedom time and time again. This beautiful area is dedicated to being that free. It's even more magnificent as you enter from below on your way to the Warrior's Terrace, where the inhabitants are tested to the maximum of their ability before Sarah and her council make sure they're worthy of staying in her secluded city. This battle ring has seen such distinguished thieves as Jacques the Scratcher and Meow-Ayardi himself, who enjoys attending the theater on weekends, if he hasn't been detained, of course. If you pass all the tests set before you, you're trusted with the secret location of Sarah's treasure trove, storing glittering trophies stolen from every corner of the spiral. Oh, there's her pet. Typical dragons obsessed with gold. Sarah has poured her heart and soul into this desert getaway, and it really shows. Her prowess at glitching added a depth to this house that's usually void, and she's used every space to add to the engaging and fun story she's woven into her palace. Alrighty, time to kick it down a notch with our Letters from the Spiral segment. Here's a good question to start with, in from Princess Madison Rose. Do you think KingsIsle would ever give us the actual ratio of our chances of getting epically rare items that are in the Horde packs, or do you think keeping it a secret is a good marketing strategy for KingsIsle? Keeping it a secret is a fantastic marketing strategy for KingsIsle, because if we really knew the odds we were up against, many of us would become discouraged and we wouldn't even bother with the packs because we knew our chances of getting that really awesome item that we wanted were 1 in several 100,000, and the same goes for any gamble, really. You wouldn't sit down at a slot machine knowing that your chances of being struck by lightning were greater than hitting the jackpot, because when you're presented with solid numbers, your common sense starts to prevail over the ooh, shiny part of your brain, and you're probably not going to grab up pack after pack. Keeping it a secret also gives KingsIsle another powerful marketing tool to their advantage, and that is word of mouth. That guy in the comments with the bow or the blood falcon bragging about how he got it on his 3rd Horde pack is actually unknowingly selling more Horde packs, because people will think to themselves, well, if he got it in 3, I can try at least 3 more packs, and then they'll buy more packs because, they can't look up the rarity of that particular item. I'm not going to say that having the odds printed anywhere is going to ruin Horde packs, but they'd certainly put a damper on KingsIsle's sales of them. Fantastic question. Speaking of taking your chances, Wolf Emerald Hunter would like to know, will KingsIsle ever make equipment with Maycast abilities? I don't think so. First and foremost, it's kind of silly to have clothing that can think for itself enough to cast a spell. Actually, forget silly, that's just downright creepy. Imagine if your pants could hold a conversation with you. Next, there's the problem of overlapping. Someone who has both a pet and a wand that may cast Tower Shield is never going to experience a challenge in the game again. Ever. Someone who has Maycast Sprightly on their hat and pet is going to be in the same boat, especially if their pet already casts it pretty frequently. These two cases, when tossed into a PvP scenario, would be particularly troublesome because they'd be practically unbeatable unless their opponents were, rocking the same thing, in which case it'd pretty much be a stalemate because neither would be able to kill each other. The gear would become nearly mandatory in PvP, or exceptions would have to be made for matches that disallowed the gear because it made players too turtley. If you're not familiar with the term turtle, it means that you basically hunker down, you don't attack, and you heal yourself until your opponent is out of mana or cards, and then you finish them. PvP as a whole would get really frustrating if every match was like that. Outside the ring, this gear would also become mandatory for some classes simply because of the way they play the game. Imagine having a double Maycast balance blade at your disposal as a Storm student. Finally, you run into the problem of assigning and eventually replacing this gear. A life student isn't going to want a garment that may cast sprightly on it because it'll use up their guiding lights, and a myth student doesn't have much use for a hat that may cast hex. In order to keep folks from being too powerful, but still catering to their powers, KI would no doubt restrict the gear to final bosses, or they'd tuck it in towers like Elephant's Tower, which doesn't necessarily mean it'd have to be school-specific, but they'd be right on track if they made it that way. They'd have to sit down and figure out which makecasts would be ideal for which schools, and that's an awful lot of work to spend on something that, may toss the game sideways. They'd have to monitor it closely after they'd finished and implemented it too. It's just more work than it's worth. Therefore, I doubt we'll ever see any make-cast clothing. Our last question for today comes in from Blaze R, who must have just beaten Zafaria right off the bat because he asks, do you think the next world released will continue the Grizzleheim story arc? It's totally possible, and I can't really give you a straight answer on this question, I'm sorry. But when we finished Wintertusk, we defeated the Coven yet again, and, massive spoiler alert if you haven't finished Wintertusk, instead of dying, the Coven of Four fled. This tells me that KingsIsle wants to keep them available for an expansion, or to perhaps somehow tie them into the Morganthine storyline. The thing that kept me wondering, though, is that we successfully defended the world from Ymir the Ice Titan. We kept him asleep, and it really doesn't get too much more end of story than that. It gives you the feeling that the Grizzleheim chapter has come to a close, that all is well and right in the world, but the fact remains that the Coven is still out there, still creating tons of trouble, and we may very well have to head back there to take care of them yet again. That open-endedness is what's muddling my ability to really answer this question. I personally believe that we will see an expansion of Grizzleheim again in the future, but I'm hard-pressed to come up with a scenario that would spook or stress the native Grizzleheimians enough to once again call upon wizards to come to their aid. Since Zafaria just came out, it'll be a while before we see another world, but I'm almost willing to bet it will be a continuation of Grizzleheim, or maybe even Wisteria. And that brings us to the end of another Wizard Weekly. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope to see you all next week, and have a happy weekend, everyone. This ice-centric pack is available in the Crown Shop for 399 crowns. Okay. Icy old favorites. The new moonflower plant. Head through the outer lobby, and you'll end up in the pet maze, where her pets... Oops. This luxurious loungeabout... Oh boy.